following program is a production of the Barroom Network and intended for all audiences.
What would your message be to young women that are just getting started or want to get started in sports broadcasting?
Was there anyone that you worked with early on, or maybe you built a bond with, that kind of helped usher you in as a young broadcaster?
Was there ever an initial comment or situation from a coworker that first struck you that you might not be getting viewed in the same light as everyone else?
Social media has clearly created a new medium for people to be cruel in the matter of seconds. Do you feel that has made it more difficult for women, or is it simply just bringing to light the ignorance that has always been there anyway?
What inspired you to get into sportscasting?
Pass the Mic with Alyssa Barbieri and John Buffon.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Pass the Mic, a show dedicated to spotlighting the struggles and accomplishments of women in sports and sports media. I'm Alyssa Barbieri, and alongside me is my co-host, co-producer, and friend, John Buffon. And if this is your first time listening, you may recognize our names from the Chicago Bears podcast we host here on the Barroom Network called Buffon 55. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Alyssa. I'm excited to be back. I always love doing this show, and now we're live and we're doing it on video. This is different. This is exciting. This is new, right?
I know. Look at us. We're coming with the times here.
Yeah, we're hip. We're with it now. And yeah, and you know what? There's so much going on in sports. There's March Madness. There's preparation for the NFL draft, the NBA. So we appreciate everyone taking some time to tune in and hang out with us. And if this is your first time listening to the show, first of all, thank you. But I think it's important to explain what this show is all about. So Alyssa, can you give our listeners a rundown?
For sure. Pass the Mic was created with a simple yet important goal: to feature women in sports and sports media. When we bring a guest on, we want to have an open conversation that brings light to some of the struggles that they have overcome throughout their career. All too often, women in sports are criticized and harassed for how they look, what they wear, or they aren't taken seriously simply because they are women. So through an honest and sometimes difficult conversation, we hope we can make a tiny difference. And if we can do that, then this show will be a success.
That's well said. And I think it's important to note that when we book guests, we try to get a diverse group of women in all stages of their career, because these struggles just don't happen to women at big companies or at small publications. It literally happens everywhere. So every story is important, and we are just here to help get those stories to our listeners. And oh, by the way, we're going to talk some sports because, well, that's what we do and that's what our guests do. So there will be some sports talk.
Exactly. And today we have an awesome guest. She is the founder of Athlete Relations, a company that provides athletes with a number of services off the field, including a short-term and long-term client relations, consulting, organizing, and advising. For our Chicago listeners, she has worked with the likes of former Bears running back Jordan Howard and current linebacker Josh Woods, as well as Lamar Campbell, current director of player engagement for the Bears. We now welcome Redig to Pass the Mic. Allie, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
So I guess we should start from the beginning. So, going back to your roots, like what got you into sports and client relations?
So sports specifically, I grew up in like a pretty heavy sports family. We were really close with the Blackhawks growing up, my whole family. My dad was like a diehard Chicago sports fan his entire life. And I can 100% sure say that he wanted a son and got one daughter. So I kind of got thrown into it at an early age. Literally our first picture together, he's holding me and holding up the three because the Bulls just won the three-peat. So it's like from day one, I was kind of bred into this. So sports has been a part of my life literally as long as I can remember. Everyone jokes that I can't chew bubblegum and walk at the same time. So those that can't do teach situation, those that can't play work, I guess, in my situation. So I started, kind of focusing on ways that I could work in sports. And I didn't really decide I wanted to work in sports until like probably halfway through college. I started with pre-med and just started like looking into like different ways to utilize that degree. And the more I was in it, just you need a passion for that for sure that I did not have. And the more I was looking into it, the more I was like, the things that I really like doing are helping people, which is obviously where that like medical degree kind of idea came in. But I love sports. So like really, how can I combine those two things? And sports are athletes, right? So you can still help people. So I would say that was really like the beginning of my like journey of kind of getting where I am today. And then as far as like actual sports career path, I started at an agency in Chicago called Priority Sports. I was a graduate intern there. Amazing company, amazing people, really love them. So I got to be there for a little while and really learn a lot of the ins and outs in that graduate internship, and then just kind of took off from there and started going to different agencies and companies and really just making relationships and networking until I was at a point where I felt like I could, do it on my own. And really I didn't think that was going to come for a long time. And the more that was just kind of falling in my plate and the way that I was kind of connecting with these athletes and their families and stuff, it was kind of a now or never situation. And so I just kind of dove into it, tried it out, and it worked.
That's a pretty incredible journey going from, a pre-med to where you are now.
Yeah.
And speaking of where you are now, what we see a lot is that as your portfolio and your career starts to get brighter, that's when people kind of want to tear you down. And can you maybe talk about maybe some of the harassment that you faced being a woman in this particular industry? Because I'm sure there's a lot of avenues for people to come at you for no other reason than besides that you're a woman.
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, like and I'm not saying other women aren't, but I can speak for myself that I can really hold my own and kind of stand up for things that I know are right, and then stay out of things that I just like don't have any business being in. So if I'm putting something out there, whether it's on social media or in an interview or something, I'm 100% standing behind it. So whether that's a sports take and, maybe not being thrilled about a certain quarterback being signed, or, it's something with defending somebody in mental health, whatever it is, like I'm standing behind that 100%. And yes, I will probably get corrected 100 times with, he'll have like a great touchdown and I'll be like, well, maybe there was one. But it's like those kind of things. Like if I'm going to put it out there, I'm going to stand behind it. People are going to have their own opinions. And one of the questions that I heard in the intro to this was something along the lines of, do you think it's gotten worse, or do you think that it's gotten, more, I guess, like highlighted because people have more access now with social media? Like Twitter fingers, they call it, whatever, is like a real thing. So I think that you just have to like understand that people need to feel powerful in some way, and they're going to say things that, they probably wouldn't say in person, and they're just going to, hide behind their screen and whatever. I try to manage as much as I can how much I really see with it. I also am lucky that I'm not like a broadcaster or something that I'm leaking information, and all these like, my opinion on certain things. My job is really to highlight the good, like the really good things that my clients are doing. So I get lucky that I get to like stay in the path of positivity, which I think helps me a lot. But there's so many people, that don't get that luxury, and their mentions are just like filled with spewing hate, which I don't know how they do it. I give them kudos for even logging back on. But I think the main thing, like I said, is just standing behind what I'm putting, whether it's a hot take, a mental health thing, or it's just something positive of my clients. Like I know what I'm putting out there.
So we've talked to a lot of women that work in sports media, and they obviously have, their own obstacles. And while you said that you kind of are able to kind of be on the more positive side of things, what do you think would be the biggest obstacle for someone being a woman, specifically in athlete-client relations?
So athlete relations specifically is very personal. I know more about these men and women that I work with than honestly some of their family members do at times. Nothing that would obviously like harm them, but in a way that it would be like very personal to get leaked. And we have NDAs and we have all these things that you don't want people to know. And it's all, just not bad things, but it's just things that I would say like definitely stick to like me having to have my morals and my values like aligned and like making sure that I'm doing the right thing. So I could see why in certain situations, like if you are getting really personal with people in general, if I'm a woman and I'm getting really personal with a guy and I'm learning all these ins and outs of their life, and I'm there when they call me at 10 p.m. at night, and, I'm the person that they go to for these things, like that could lead to a very awkward relationship with, if they don't understand the boundaries. I'm very, very, very good at sticking with my boundaries, and just like, if it's an emergency, of course, call me at 10 o'clock, I'll take care of it. But like, listen, this isn't okay, or that's not okay. Luckily, all of the clients that I work with are amazing, and they've never ever done anything like that. And they've never even come close to doing anything like that. A lot of them are married, have kids, whatever. And I'm close with their families. So it makes it easier, but I could definitely see why people that are in certain positions, like I said, client relations specifically, where you're so ingrained in their life, where that could be, you know, that line could be blurred, and like you just, it's on you, it's on me to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that those boundaries are set and they don't move.
And staying in that same vein, you've worked with a lot of high-profile athletes, a lot of high-profile clients, and we've talked to other women that say that people will go out of their way to denigrate an accomplishment or say that you only got somewhere because of whatever. Have you ever experienced that, or know other women in this business that have experienced that, where it says, well, that client only came to you because you're a woman, or that person's only talking to you because you're a woman? Has that ever happened to you, despite the fact that you probably worked your ass off for that, but someone just easily just throws that label on it?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, like, client relations can very easily get twisted into being like a personal assistant, basically, which my clients know that it's so much more than that. And like the partnerships that we have, and et cetera, it makes a really big difference. But I think at the same time, like, if you're only able to see the assistant side of it, I think that it's easy to just be like, okay, well, anyone can do that. And like, you're only good at that because you're a woman and you're organized and you're good at taking care of other men. And like, I've gotten those comments a lot. I think it's really just a matter of holding your ground. And again, I know that what I do is not a personal assistant. Like, I'm not running errands for these guys and going grocery shopping and taking care of their kids and being a nanny. It's more like, obviously, just kind of holding my own and knowing that that's not the case. And those comments that are, going to be said, like, you just have to let them brush off your back. Like, again, you know what you're worth and you know what your work is worth. And all of those comments that I've gotten in the past. And there's literally been situations where I'll be standing with a client and like somebody else that he works with, a marketing agent, an agent, or whatever, will say something like, oh, I'll just take care of that. That's easy. Like, yes, there are certain tasks that get thrown our way that are super easy. Make a dinner reservation. Yeah, okay, of course, it's super simple. But at the same time, like, undermining and grouping what we do down to, dwindling it down to like, oh, she just makes dinner reservations, like, that's offensive. And obviously, it's just a matter of them not really understanding exactly what we do, obviously, right? They don't understand the partnerships and all that goes behind like the branding side and things like that. So I just kind of take that as like, you know what? It's just a lack of knowledge. Like, you know what? That's a reminder for me. I need to regroup with that person afterwards, because I should explain to them, maybe again, they didn't get it the first time or whatever, and give them more knowledge. But there's been so many times where it's just like, you're good at that because you can take care of men. Like, you have a husband, right? Like, you're good at this. And I'm like, I don't make dinner reservations for this man. Like, that's not the same thing at all.
Oh, goodness. And I know that, you talked a little bit about social media and how some women that work in sports media specifically, some of their mentions, especially if they have a hot take that people don't necessarily agree with, like, their mentions will be flooded with negativity. And you did say that you have some more of like positivity in your mentions, but I mean, it is social media. So there are people out there that, do have negative things to say. So, anytime that you get kind of harassed on social media, how do you handle that?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm lucky because I'm not the one usually spewing the hot takes. I've got my own, and I'll say them every now and then. And believe me, I was the first person to throw Mitch Trubisky under the bus. God bless him. But it was just like one of those things, like, you're going to have people that are like, you're an idiot. Like, okay, yeah, maybe I am. And like, maybe the fact that he's made it to another wild card game, sure. But like, it's just a matter of opinion at that point. So in those cases, I just have to like brush that off and literally be like, this doesn't make sense. It's just two different opinions. However, like, I have so many friends that, like, I have one friend that she writes about quarterbacks, and she, honestly, the stuff that people say to her about sleeping with them and the things that she like has to deal with because she put out a different ranking than they would agree with, like, that's disgusting. Like, I'm lucky because, like I said, the stuff that I'm putting out there is like, look at the birthday dinner that we put together for X client and his wife. Like, no one's going to respond to that and be like, you're an idiot. Like, they're gonna be like, cool, looks good. Like, I get lucky because those are like kind of more, I would say, generally the responses that I get. The responses that I get that I don't love are more like, somebody will be like, oh, this, like, you got this because you look that way, or you are only on this show, or you only got to work with this client because you look a certain way or act a certain way, or you're young and you're this and you're whatever. It's like, no, I actually am really good at my job. And that gets portrayed. So I would say, like, there's a very fine line between just like undermining your job versus like what I was saying with her, where it's like, that's straight up harassment. And again, fortunately, I'm not the one that's like on the back end of those as far as, you know, to that extent, because I'm not a reporter and I'm not putting out all these like facts and opinions, like that kind of stuff usually, but it's still there and it's always going to be there. So I would say just like as much as you can, just the best way that I can say it is like contribute it to like lack of understanding. Like they don't understand what you do. They don't understand you. And they're not going to be you, right? Like I have a really cool job and I'm really lucky and I'm really blessed that I get to work with these people. So I'm always like, if I get in a mood where I'm just like seeing all this negative stuff, I'm like, they wish they could work with these people. Like I have to just like chalk it up to that and be like, I'm really blessed. And like the people that I get to work for love me and support me and like love my company, love my people that we get to work with. And like, why not just chalk it up to being jealous at that point?
Look, the Trubisky talk is for a different podcast, and we're going to try to keep this to under 15 hours, but we could definitely talk about it a little bit more. But,
how long do we need?
Yeah. Entirely different podcast altogether. You're going to get me revved up on that, but that's neither here nor there. But talking about your journey to where you are now, you said that you didn't really know if you wanted to, or you didn't know you wanted to do this until you were already in college. And I think a lot of young women, young girls probably would like to try an avenue in sports, but they don't know where that is, or they didn't even know that this was a possibility, that they could get into client relations. So what advice would you have for young women, young girls who are trying to work in the sports industry, and maybe client relations is something that would seem enticing to them? What would be your advice to them moving forward?
So I got lucky because I essentially got to like pave my own path with this. And it was like a series of accidents, truthfully. Like the way that my job came about was like very happy accidents, obviously, but it wasn't like I was like, okay, this is definitely what I want to do. I'm going to go to college, study client relations. That doesn't exist. You know, there was so many different ways that I studied sports management. You can do PR, you can do marketing, you can do anything with that, which is, I mean, you can literally go to law school after and be an agent. So for me personally, it was kind of like, okay, I know I want to do something in this realm. I want to start looking into the different opportunities that are there. Luckily, my first internship at Priority, the graduate internship that I mentioned, their marketing and PR departments works closely with their client relations department. So I was kind of involved in all of that space. So I got to really see what goes into it. But if I didn't have that, I don't know that I would have really understood what went into client services, and then to be able to grow in that space specifically. So like my next jobs afterwards were specifically, you know, designed around client services. So I would say, and I actually just talked about this in Sports Agent blog, I think yesterday, the article came out, you have to start somewhere, right? So if you take your first job, like I said, that graduate internship, I thought I was me doing marketing and only marketing. And I ended up doing a lot more. I did social media management and client relations. Like if I didn't take that job, even knowing like I'm not sure I want to do marketing, but I'm going to start here. If I didn't take that, I wouldn't have learned what I learned about client relations and obviously ran with it, and had all the other opportunities that I did have afterwards. And like I said, the article that came out on Sports Agent blog is so great because it really talks about, there was two other women in sports that I had mentioned in there. One's an agent and one's a broadcaster. And they were talking about the same thing. She's an agent now, but she started in client relations. And she's like, I know that I want to be doing contracts. Like I'm kind of feeling like I'm in a weird spot. I don't really want to be doing client relations. Well, like her first contract that she negotiated, she said she was able to be like, and I can do some client relations pieces because I also know all of this now. So I would like my best advice now. And it's funny because I learned it from like those two women talking, and I was just listening to a podcast about them or an Instagram thing. And it's literally just like start where you can, learn what you can from that position and go from there. You'll learn pros and cons, right? You're going to learn what you like. You're going to learn what you don't like. You're going to learn what you're good at, and you're going to learn what you're not good at. Like nobody's good at everything. So take the same grace that you give yourself for like being really good at something, being, wow, I'm proud of myself. Take that grace and be like, okay, I'm not good at this, but that's fine because it's showing me where I really want to go.
Yeah, that's some great advice, especially because, you know, sometimes, you know, women, like you said, they might do, like they might like join, maybe as a broadcaster, maybe that's not the fit for them. And they, along the way, they discover something that is the perfect fit for them. So I think that's great advice for our listeners. And now I want to kind of switch gears to the industry. So Allie, can you tell our listeners about what you do at Athlete Relations, like some of the services you provide to athletes and all that?
Yeah, so we provide lifestyle management services, which is about as generic as it sounds. So every client that we work with is just a little bit different. Obviously, where they are professionally, where they are personally, are they married? Do they have kids? Are they on a long year contract, multi-year contract or whatever? So we kind of handle everything that goes on in their life personally. So that can range from super simple things, like I mentioned, I kind of compare it to like levels. So like the surface level being dinner reservations, things like that, travel, whatever, things that, really somebody else could book. But it's just having it be in one organized, like streamlined place. And then the second level is more like bigger events. So like, domestic travel, international travel, like week-long trips, moves, if they get traded. We help find the kids new schools. We're moving their cable company. I mean, you name it, we're handling everything so they can literally pick up, go to their new team, start working out, and we just handle everything. Like we've got access to it all, which is obviously very helpful. And then I'd say like the third rung down is really just big events. So like football camps that they put on over the summer, charity events, like you name it. We've done like engagements. We've helped with wedding stuff. We've helped with huge birthday parties, like anything that really falls into like that larger category. So that's kind of like the breakdown of the tiers. And then we utilize all of our partnerships. So we have partnerships with like hotel companies and travel and gifting, so they can get products and paid sponsorships and media opportunities and things like that. So we can kind of pull everybody from our network. And I always compare it to like a funnel. So we can like funnel it down and pull it all down towards the athletes so that they have a one streamlined place and work with all the other people in their circle. So whether it's an agent or a masseuse or a trainer or a financial advisor, marketing manager, publicist, whatever, like we have one streamlined communication. We have one calendar that everybody's looking at. It just keeps it all very simple and organized, and it makes everybody's lives infinitely easier.
You talked a lot about some of those services that people don't think of. And that was kind of my next question, because after all, sports, professional sports, it's a business. And there's a lot that goes on to that. There's a lot more that goes on than just what happens on the field. And so for fans, they don't really think about a lot of that. They see they watch 3 hours of football and then they're done. They just figure, okay, turn the athletes off and we'll turn them back on next Sunday at 1 o'clock. So behind the scenes, what kind of services that do you provide, or do you help these clients out with that a lot of fans don't really think of, that keeps them going, that keeps their routine the same so they can perform the best that they can come game day? What are some of the things that you help provide them to kind of keep them in that comfort routine?
Yeah, it's definitely like a reminder. Like, these people don't live in your TV. They have lives, they have feelings, they have emotions. Stop yelling at them on Twitter. But I would say like the biggest thing for me is, really connecting, like I said, with all those people in their life. Like you guys can probably attest to this from speaking to other people in the industry, but like there's so many people that don't realize how many people are on an athlete's team, like all the ones that I just mentioned. And that's just like surface level. Some of them own businesses or invest in businesses, and they've got that whole side to be working on. They've also got interviews. And oh, by the way, now you have to remember, you have to do this post on social media or you don't get paid for it. It's just so many things at once. And it is at once. Like it's 24/7, 365. Like there's not really a slower season for them. Maybe like the week after Super Bowl, they can go on like a vacation and stuff, obviously. But like even while they're there, it's like, make sure you're branding yourself, like be smart. So it's really just like a combination of like, one, making sure that like, again, the fans and the other people that are on the other side of things are remembering like, hey, these are real people and they have real lives and kids and families and emotions. And you can't just like treat them like they're this puppet, which is something the NFLPA is great with. They have the athlete and program. I don't know if you guys have seen that on Twitter that they've implemented. So it's like finding your and. So I'd say like that's a really big one, is like helping us like, okay, when you're done with football, what are these things that you're going to want to be doing? Whether it's broadcast, whether it's investing, whether it's, just spending time with your family if you get paid enough to not have to work later. It's really planning for that though. And that doesn't just take me. Like you have to have a financial advisor involved. You have to have business managers involved if you're going to be doing that kind of stuff. So it's really like, I would say that's like probably the biggest thing is making sure that like they're completely set up for later. If the average NFL career, which is right now is like 3.5 years, like you're not usually making enough money in 3.5 years to spend the rest of your life plus your family, et cetera, to be living the life you're living right now. So it's like, how are we setting them up for the future and making sure they're taken care of? And that's, you start today with that, right? You start with interviews. And if they start being really good with interviews, hey, do you want to look into broadcasting? Or you start with the financial advisor. Like, we need to set you on a budget. And the way we do that is utilize partnerships with athlete relations, that next time you go on that family vacation, we're getting you half off your hotel. So you're not spending all your money in a way that you don't need to, strictly because you're an athlete. You should be getting discounts on these things because that's a marketing opportunity for that hotel. So you really need to like formulate these plans for them to make sure that they're utilizing their name, their brand in the best way possible and setting themselves up for the rest of their lives.
So it sounds like you guys provide quite a lot of beneficial services. Have you ever like had any strange or unique requests from any clients that go beyond that?
Honestly, it's funny. I literally said, like, I can't think of something I haven't done at this point, as far as like their families. Like I've literally done research on schools for their children. And I'm like, I remember that. Actually, that's a funny one. I remember that day I called my mom. I was like, when you were looking for schools for me, what did you look for? Like, I don't have kids. I don't know. Like, I will do it and I will do this job well, but like, oh my God, I had no idea what to do. That was like probably like my 3rd year in the industry. And I remember being like, oh God. So like, that was definitely a funny one. There's always like the random asks that you're just like, how is this my job? There was one a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna have to remember what it was, but it was something along the lines of like, we're getting ready to do obviously moves and stuff for all the trades and everything. And I think it was something with the fact that they needed to get, it was just a mattress that they wanted to ship. One of our guys wanted to ship to some family back home. He didn't need a second mattress anymore. And I straight up was like, I'm going to have to drive this U-Haul across the country, aren't I? I know it. I'm going to get roped in and I'm going to have to drive this thing. I didn't, for the record. It's fine. I'm not driving a U-Haul across the country. I also wouldn't survive that. But we were laughing because moving companies don't just move. They have like minimums that they need to like, I mean, you can pay it and they'll move one mattress, but it's like more than the mattress is worth. So like, why would you do it? And I just remember being like, this is seriously like such a weird thing. But another thing that we do, given the fact that like I have family, we do holidays all over the country, obviously COVID aside. So if there's ever players that are, don't have a family that they're there, we actually did it with Jordan Howard when he was in Chicago and I was there. We always invite them to like Christmas or Easter or holidays that we're all home and they would be without their family and they would just be at home by themselves. So that's definitely like outside of like, I would say my normal services, for lack of a better term. But we really try to make sure that they do feel like family. So I wouldn't say that was like a different request because obviously we offered that. But I don't want them to ever feel like they don't have somebody, you know what I mean? Like, I'm always going to be there. Like, I literally had to fly last week to see a client literally just to help him with a few things. And he was like, can you just come? Like, I'm really overwhelmed. And like, yes, I will be there. So at the end of the day, it's really more like, yes, it's a unique request to have to come and just do like a few things and then get back on a plane and jump home. I know one though. I did have to book. I bought a house for a client. He never saw the house before he made the offer. I only went and saw it. So I was like, that's a big one.
Trust.
That was a big one. That just came to me. We were looking for houses and he was supposed to meet me there and their flight home from the game the night before got delayed and he couldn't make it home. So then he couldn't get to the place, where we were buying the house. And he was like, can you just go look at a few and like, let me know what looks good. And this was like first home. This wasn't just like a fly by night. It was like a big deal. And I was like, what are you looking for? Like, do you have any ideas? And like, he gave me a few pointers. I took a few videos and he made an offer. I was like, oh my God, like terrifying.
And yeah, so that I got to ask, because you're talking about all the crazy moving that the clients are doing, all the crazy the things that the clients are constantly going here, going there. There's no off season. That means there's really no off season for you either, right? So can you talk about what it's like for you constantly having to, like you said, maybe get on a plane and go here, or maybe take care of this here, and then this client says this one says that. That has to wreak havoc on your sleep schedule, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
what's that like?
Schedule. I think I'll be a great parent because I don't really sleep a lot now. It's definitely, I would say, like unique. there's not a lot of people, I think, that can just adapt to this. I think I'm lucky. I started this when I was single. I had no kids. Like, I didn't have a house to own or anything. I can literally just be where I needed to be, whatever. Now that I'm settling down, obviously, like getting married, we have a house, whatever. I think that there's a lot more that goes into the planning side of it. So for example, last week I had to travel and I could have gone Saturday, but I had something that like I needed to be at personal wise Saturday night. So I jumped on the first flight Sunday, and I mean, literally 5 a.m. flight on Sunday. And it worked. Like, and if it wouldn't have worked, I would have, figured something out. I would have sent one of our freelance girls or one of anybody that needed to be there, but I knew that I could make it work. So it's really just about like kind of monitoring, like, prioritizing, like where do I need to be and when, and really just making sure that the clients know, like they're going to be a priority, but there's certain things that, like, one, they pay for my travel. So if I don't have to go and fly somewhere and make them pay for all of that, like I'm going to save you money. So like I can do this from home. Like, let's take a breath. Where do we need to start? I've gotten really good at that part. So I think that helps too. But it definitely is, like, I would say chaotic sometimes. And really I don't have an off season, but like who does at work? I mean, no one in a normal industry is like, oh, I get 3 months off at the end of the year. Like, no. But if there is something like, for example, our wedding week, like I know for a fact that all of my clients are not going to be like calling me and being like, hey, I need you to fly here. Like, they're very understanding. They know that I'm still a human being. I'm not a robot. And there's just certain things, like our dog was in the hospital one day and I was in the middle of a project for a client and I literally called them and I was like, I need to put pause on this. Like, it's not due for a week, so we've got plenty of time, but like, I just need to take care of something. And there wasn't a peep out of them. Like, they're like, absolutely, take care of it. We'll talk to you later. Like, they're very understanding.
And I have to know, how did you get the nickname The Plug?
That was John Franklin. He is hilarious. First of all, one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And now his girlfriend, at the time he was single, but his girlfriend now is just as funny. We love them. So when I was explaining to him, I'm not kidding. This is actually a funny story. So we're at Super Bowl. This was Atlanta. This was 2 Super Bowls ago. So we're in Atlanta, at a like party, I was getting my guys in. I go there, I make sure they're settled, they're safe. Like, it's not a sketchy situation with a bunch of like girls surrounding them or being anything weird. So I got my guys in, I made sure they were safe. I'm about to leave. I see a guy and I'm like, he looks really familiar. John Franklin was on the practice squad of the Bears at the time. And I'm like, he looks familiar. I think I know him. I'm just gonna go up and ask. So I go up to him and I'm like, hey, you look super familiar. I think, are you on the Bears? I'm from Chicago, whatever. He's like, yeah, I am. And you can tell he was like, is this like a girl? Like, what's happening? And I was like, no. I work with Lamar. I work with Soup. Like, I work with all the guys. Here's the clients that I've worked with. I worked with Prince Amukamara at the time, Jordan Howard, whatever. So he opens up immediately. He's like, all right, sweet. You're trustworthy. Like, we love it. He jumps in. He's like, all right, so what do you do? I've seen Jordan post some of your stuff. And I'm like, so here's the rundown. I kind of gave him the idea. And he sat there for a second. I remember he's wearing these little glasses. And he's like, so you're like the plug. And I was like, the what? And he was like, and we're in a club. The what? And he's like, the plug. And I'm like, what does that mean? I don't remember being like, what does that mean? And he was like, you're plugged in. Like, you have all the connects. And I was like, oh, yeah, yes, that's exactly what I am. Thank you. And then the next week we were on a like actual work call. I'm like, okay, let's actually talk this through. Like, how can I help? Like, where you're at with your career, whatever. And I told him, and he was like, I just have you as the plug emoji in my phone. I don't even know what else. Like, that's all I need to know. And I was like, oh my God. And then someone else like heard us talking about that or whatever. And they're like, that's hilarious. And then it stuck. And then it just kind of became like a funny joke between some of our clients. So when they put it in our testimonials, which I think is on my website, I think that's when I put it on the website. Cause I was like, this is just fun. It's a funny joke between all of us now. And I'm like, I didn't even know what it was.
Well, Allie, before we get you out of here, we're going to give the plug a chance to plug all of her websites and social media. So go ahead and tell people how they can connect with you and your business on social media, how they can find your website and on all the services that you provide.
Yeah. So Athlete Relations is literally just athleterelations.com. Super easy. Love the domain. Same on Instagram and Twitter, fully written out on Instagram and just abbreviated on Twitter, but it'll come up if you search it. And mine is in the little box underneath me here. It's just Ridiculous, which is like my last name, but funny. And I'm not changing that when I get married. So that will stay because that's just too good of a pun. And I am super active on any of our messages that come through our website or anything. I get those forwarded to me by my assistant. So she'll send anything over that comes through. So I'm super responsive on there. I check my DMs as much as I possibly can. So I'm pretty available as long as they're nice messages.
A good pun is worth its weight in gold. Never let that go. Ali Redig, founder of Athlete Relations. Thank you so much for being a part of Pass the Mic and letting us into your world a little bit to understand that side of sports. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Absolutely. We'll be right back with the mic drop after this.
Welcome back to Pass the Mic. Now it's time for the mic drop where John and I wrap up the show. So John, that certainly opened up a different side of sports that, we've seen on this show before.
Absolutely. I think it's important to talk about that other side of sports, things that we don't see on the field, because like Ali said, these people are humans. They have families, they have interests outside of sports. And all too often we see that, they're just, wind up dolls, just let them go and they'll play for 3 hours and then we'll put them back on the shelf until next Sunday and they're just robots, but they aren't. And there's so much that goes on to that. First of all, the NFL or any other sports league or multi-billion dollar industries a lot of the times. And these guys have a lot of, like she said, maybe 3.5 years worth of a career. And they got to try to use that to catapult them into the next chapter of their lives. And they have to rely on those client relations specialists, much like Ali. So I just thought it was really interesting, all the things, and to kind of pull back the curtain and see what goes on off the field that really keeps these guys' lives moving. I just found that very fascinating.
Yeah, I certainly didn't know a whole bunch of the stuff that she was mentioning. Like, a lot really goes into it. I found it really, really interesting. It's a field that, it's glamorous. It sounds glamorous, but it's also difficult because, like, she talked about almost kind of having no off season, having to be on 24/7, 365 days a year, and all of the work that goes into that. And I found it very interesting. I love how every guest that we are bringing on, is bringing a new perspective to being a woman in sports, because while she's not, a woman in sports media and she doesn't, put those hot takes out that might get her some of the criticism, she does have her own struggles that she's gone through as well. And to kind of hear her journey and how she started pre-med and wound up where she is, which is pretty cool. Something that she's really passionate about. I just found that really, really interesting.
Yeah, and she has a whole different set of struggles that she has to deal with in her particular industry. And so, and once again, there's no off season for the athletes. There's no off season for the clients. They're constantly doing something. So that means she has to be constantly doing something. So there is so much dedication and hard work and probably sleepless nights to go into that profession that it's silly to think that it's that easy and she got to where she is because she's a woman or whatever else, because that's just garbage. And a lot of those professional athletes would not hire somebody because they're really entrusting their entire life outside of their sport. They're trusting the rest of the things that fall into place. They're trusting people like Ali to take care of that. So once again, I just want to thank Ali Redig for coming on the show. I want to thank Aldo Gandia, who's running the board. And I want to thank you, Alyssa, a big part of this show. Always fun to do this with you, whether it's on this show or Buffon 55 or anything else we do. It's fun, and it's a lot more fun on video. I kind of enjoyed this new format we got here. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to continue this format tomorrow with Buffon 55. So I'm going to plug that. We have a special off-season episode tomorrow where we're going to be talking about the salary cap, the NFL draft, free agency. So we aren't going anywhere this off-season. So podcast season kind of like Allie's field is all season long. There is
long.
no off season. And also, if you liked this episode of Pass the Mic, be sure to go back and listen to our entire library. Every show and every guest is unique, and the episodes aren't time sensitive. So it's definitely a binge-worthy show.
Oh, it definitely is. And before we head out, I just want to remind everyone to give Alyssa a follow on Twitter at Alyssa Barbieri, myself at JD Buffone. Go ahead and follow the Barroom Network for all of our awesome shows. We got sports, entertainment, everything beyond that. Also, be sure to check out bearsbarroom.com. Thank you to everyone who tuned into this live episode of Pass the Mic, and thank you to those catching us on demand on the podcast version as well. But for Alyssa Barbieri, I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next time on Pass the Mic.